just give me the cue.
Yeah, it's already recording.
Oh, okay, work. So I'm gonna use this scene to highlight, pause, rewind, starting over. The movie that I am going to be analyzing is Fight Club. It's a film by David Fincher, adapted from a book by Chuck Palahniuk, and it was put up for production in 1999. The scene that we're going to be analyzing is the scene between the two main characters, and I'm going to use the scene to show how David Fincher highlights the psychosis of various characters based on like his cinematic choices, especially considering in context this is a scene between one man whose personality is split between two different people.
What is this? This is chemical.
So this scene starts off with a very ominous kind of sense, in the sense that when Tyler kisses the hand, it serves two purposes. A, he's moisturizing it a little bit for the sake of when the actual chemical hits his hand, the moisture will incite more of a burn. Second off, immediately as the scene starts, you can show the power dynamic between Jack and Tyler is that Jack is kind of in control of the situation. Jack is the one who has it's his body, it's his mind that's being kind of messed with. And then immediately you see a shift. So as that angle shifts, the power has just shifted greatly between Jack and Tyler. Tyler has just inserted himself and asserted himself and put himself in the dominant position, because now he has Jack at his full mercy, honestly.
Everyone you've ever been burned and you have a scar. Got your meditation work for cancer, good work for this.
So that kind of not a flashback, but that sense of the cross-cutting here shows that basically his narrating of the scene is supposed to represent Jack reflecting on all these situations, but it's also interesting to note that his voice is very calm. He's kind of, guided meditation work for cancer, when in actuality, the reality of the situation is he's burning his own hand, and it's shown as Tyler doing it, but the psychosis is revealed and he's trying to meditate himself through the pain and pretend like it doesn't hurt and distract himself, but Tyler keeps forcing him to understand the reality of what's going on.
Put your hand on set to set. Get your hand. The first something you made from the ashes of heroes, like the first monkey shot in space, without pain, without sacrifice. You would have nothing. I tried nothing.
So, in this sense, he's trying to force Jack to experience this pain, and Jack keeps trying to reject it. And the greater he struggles against Tyler, for example, is showing that the more he tries to remove himself from this kind of twisted, warped mentality and disassociative principle of reality that he has, the more it hurts. And that's a theme throughout the entire film. It's only human to fear pain, and as Jack attempts to do this with meditative techniques, Tyler gets increasingly angry. So the angrier Tyler gets, you start to see that Jack is being lowered. He keeps lowering further and further, and it shows that Tyler's kind of demonic personality is taking over the entirety of Jack's psychosis.
And the word seal or flesh.
And also a big thing to note is that throughout the movie, David Fincher kind of shows how crazy Jack is by his narration and simultaneously his flashbacks and augmented reality that is shown through various things presenting themselves that aren't really happening. And this is kind of an allusion to the big reveal, especially considering David Fincher was one of the people who use suspense in a very interesting way. So although you just think that these are all cinematic flares, they're really to build to the big reveal that Jack and Tyler are the same person.
This is your pain. This is your burning hand. It's right here. Go to my case. Go to my case and find my power. No!
So this portion is important because as Tyler gets more angry, he starts to remove his protective gear. And it's interesting to note that like as he throws off the glove and he smacks Jack's hand, he's forcing him to have more pain, but he also starts to not care as much about whether or not he gets hurt in the situation. So it's this reckless abandon that is a huge thematic like motif.
Yo, dude, come on! No, what you're feeling is premature enlightenment.
And so Jack tries to even, like his most potent memory is of Marla, and Marla is the kind of like white light. And you can see that in contrast to the flashback he had before where he was trying not to think about fire and searing flesh. Now he's in this like cool like place that kind of is like his sanctuary. That's his like happy place, and he goes there often when he's in periods of turmoil. And it's white. It has this blue, like calm, serene feel in contrast to the burning sensation that's actually going on in his mind. So this disassociative like principle is just very consistent and is shown through imagery in the film.
This is the greatest moment of your life, man, and you're off somewhere behind.
So like as like Jack tries to escape, Tyler has him so firmly like he's so far down the rabbit hole that he really can't escape like the depths of his psychosis and what's going on like within his own mind. But it's really hard to imagine that this is one person doing this to themselves. But that aspect is shown in the next like.
Our fathers were our models for God. If our fathers failed, what does that tell you about God? Listen to me.
And also the fact that he references God and then smacks him for the second time, you know, it's a common theme in religion that the hand of God will be placed on you in times where you need him. And it's to symbolize that Jack needs Tyler to break him out of this like kind of pathetic consumeristic life that he's leading. But it gets a little out of control. And also Tyler's constantly preaching philosophy to him. There's a lot of Nietzschean like themes in this that are being preached to him as he's like in this moment of intense pain.
Consider the possibility that God does not like you, never wanted you. In all probability, he hates you. It's not the worst thing that can happen. It is. We don't agree. I got fuck redemption, man. Fuck redemption. We are God's unwanted children. So be it. Listen, you can run water over your head and make it worse, or look at me. Or you can use vinegar to neutralize it.
So this is like a common theme in like how you break down someone's mentality and then build them back up. So as like Tyler raises up just to change the angle, and it's interesting to note that they don't spend any, David Fincher spends no more than 3 seconds on any one shot. Like the shots continually across cut back and forth, back and forth. So you change, right now we're at Jack's perception of Tyler, who's like kind of looming over him, and then switches back around to Jack's. Then you're this third person, like kind of observing the scene, but there's just 3 seconds, boom, 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 boom. As soon as like the camera angle shifts, it kind of builds that sense of like this chaos, this like frantic, like kind of attempt to escape the clutches of like this nihilistic attitude.
First, you have to give up. First, you have to know, not fear. Know that someday you're gonna die. You don't know how this feels.
So this portion is particularly important because once he tells him that you have to know and like you have to embrace the pain in order to really live, this like is showing him that when Jack shows him, or Tyler shows his hand to Jack, and is showing that I have the same exact scar, like this has happened to me before. It's an allusion to the big reveal that they are the same person, so whatever's happening to Jack is actually happening to Tyler and vice versa. But simultaneously, it's meant to represent that once Jack fully gives himself over to Tyler's personality, that's when he'll be able to do all the things that he wished he could have done as like a man and be this like manly like ubermensch that Tyler represents himself to be. And this is like one of the most iconic lines from the whole film that's about to come up.
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. Congratulations. One step closer to getting mine.
So this is like the end of the scene, and it's important to note that once Tyler feels like Jack is giving up, once he feels like he's relinquished all control, and admitted to himself that like Jack is right, that Tyler is right, Jack kind of gives him this godlike perception and says, okay, you are right, and then he becomes a savior by giving him the vinegar, which stops the poison, stops the chemical burn. And that being the case, it is this moment where this is the final break between Jack and Tyler. Like, they have now become one person. And he says at the end, congratulations, you're one step closer to hitting bottom. When in actuality, I mean, Jack literally just hit bottom. And yeah, so this is like the final point where things are seemingly normal before they all get out of control. And that's the end of the personality of Jack as himself. Cool.
Thank you. Could you state your name?
Kyle Williams.
Brady,
First.
you have a question?
Yeah. So Jack says at a point that he's finding his power animal in his power cave, which turns out to be Marlo. What does that signify in comparison to his real power animal, which was something like a penguin or something?
Yeah, so it's the show that like, okay, so first off, the fact that his power animal is a penguin, it's like this like black and white kind of weak like character. And you know, penguins can't, they're only birds that can't fly. And that kind of restriction is to show like how Jack is restricted. I have a working theory that Marla is actually another projection of Jack's mind, because she's a very androgynous, like nondescript character who is consistently in the same situations as Jack, but they never really give an exact, clarification on who Marla is and what role she plays. But that's my working theory, is that like his mind is so like muddled that he doesn't even realize that Marla's a projection as well. And in this weird triangle between the three of them, that is showing the further breakdown of his like psyche.
What role does lighting play in this scene?
So it's actually like, okay, so I
The whole
think
movie too.
a lot of elements of film noir throughout the film, but interestingly enough, this is a very well lit scene, and I think that the relationship between like Jack and Tyler is highlighted because everything in the background is very dark, but in the actual moment there's this light, and Tyler is supposed to be this kind of like savior. He's saving Jack from himself, saving Jack from like the sad, like depressing aspects of his life by forcing him to deal with like these things that are otherworldly and like unnatural. And that being the case, it is supposed to be well lit because it's this moment of revelation. He talks about how this is a premature enlightenment, right? So he's literally enlightening Jack throughout the sequence. Cool.
Perfect, thank you very much. Congratulations, Kyle.